It's the 30-Day Solo Podcast Challenge. This is day number 26. I'm David Hooper from bigpodcast.com, and my job is to help you grow a big audience for your message. We're doing that via podcasting, and this series is specifically about developing the skills you need to be a solo podcaster. That's going to give you a lot more options, a lot more flexibility in your podcasting experience. We're going to help you improve your delivery. We're going to help you connect with your audience better and also clarify your message so potential listeners find you, and when they do hear you, they're instantly connected to what you're doing. When that happens, the podcast that you have is highly effective. It's highly effective at getting clients, it's highly effective at making you money, and it's highly effective at changing lives and spreading your message. If you have not already done this, listen to the intro episode first. This explains the what and the why of everything I'm talking about here. Bigpodcast.com/subscribe has that. It has all 30 exercises of the 30-Day Solo Podcast Challenge. That's what this is. Don't make it a bigger deal than it needs to be. You should have fun with this. You should experiment with this. What I'm doing is helping you workshop things that will translate into the podcast that you've already got. None of this stuff that we're working on together needs to be heard by the public. However, I want you to do more than just think about it. I want you to get in the studio, get behind a mic, and I want you to actually go through the motions. That's what's going to give you this powerful podcast that I'm helping you to develop. Previously, we talked about what you're working on now, what your present situation is, what you're currently doing, what you're excited about. It's not only what you're working on now, but it's what's working for you now. Today, the focus, something similar. I want you to talk about the tools that you use to do what you do. What's your podcast about? Well, what are the tools that you use to do that thing? Basically, what you're doing is talking about the process. And I'm asking you this question for a couple of reasons. One, it's behind the scenes information, and people are curious about what you do. You're putting yourself out there all the time on your podcast. And if you're doing what I'm suggesting, you're putting yourself out in a very personal way. Because of that, people feel connected to you. They want to know more about you. And this is a way to let them know more about you. The second reason this works is it may help somebody do what you do if you were explaining how to do something as part of your podcast. For example, this is a podcast about podcasting. I'm showing you how to make a podcast through bettering your hosting skills. And the tools I'm going to talk about are what I use to make this podcast. Right now, I'm talking into a mic called the BP-30. The company that makes it is Audio-Technica. It is a broadcast mic. You may be familiar with the Electro Voice RE20, the Shure SM7B. This is Audio-Technica's version of those mics. It's a broadcast mic. It is meant for voice. I actually use an RE20 when I'm doing my broadcast radio show. And that's a great mic. It's got a classic radio sound. The reason I went with this mic was to give me something different. When I started podcasting, I wanted to differentiate myself from the radio that I was doing. I wanted to own podcasting. And because I'm working with people on spreading a message, I decided to go with less expensive, easy-to-use equipment that people could emulate. On the 30-Day Solo Podcast Challenge series, I've talked about how people who listen to you, they look up to you. They're looking to you as the authority. And even though it would be very easy for me to use that same equipment that I'm used to using on broadcast radio and have compressors and limiters and rack-mounted gear with blinky lights, I know how to use this stuff. I've actually got some of this stuff in the studio. It has its purpose. But throughout this series, you are hearing this very simplified, very direct method of me recording my voice because I know people are emulating this. And you're going to say, what do you use to do that? How do you sound like that? Well, this is how I do it. This is as simple as it gets because of what I said. This is as simple as it gets. The microphone, it is going directly into a Focusrite Scarlett I2I interface. And what that does is it takes the analog signal of my voice and it converts it into ones and zeros to go to the next step of the process, which is into a Dell laptop. And I've got no idea what model this thing is. Dell sent it to me for free because they wanted me to talk about it. You know, influencer. That's what we're talking about here, right? When companies know you've got an audience, when they know that you can reach people with a message, they come to you and they want you to talk about what it is that they're doing. Well, Dell knew that I could reach you with this message, and they said, hey, have a computer on us. You can talk about it. You can not talk about it. That's kind of how they do it. They can't tell you to talk about it. Not when they're giving it to you for free. When they're paying you, they can tell you to talk about it because then it's something completely different. They just highly suggested it. Anyway, it's a Dell laptop. On that laptop, Audacity, free software. And I'm using that because one, something like Pro Tools is overkill for a podcast. When it's just my voice, a single track, put a little music at the beginning to add a second track, you don't need something like Pro Tools. But also for accessibility, people are listening to me and they think podcasting is complicated. Part of my message, what I'm spreading here, is podcasting is easier and more accessible than you realize. But I also use it to set that foundation that it's okay to use free software. You can have a great sounding podcast on free software. You can have a great sounding podcast with inexpensive mics. Audio-Technica, they make a great low-cost mic called the ATR 2100. That is something that I use when I'm doing webcast. I use that all the time, about $60. So throw that in the toolkit. A bonus, less expensive mic, $60, ATR 2100. All of these things will be available in the episode notes. Here's your action step because I want to hear about your toolkit. Grab a pen, grab a paper, write down the tools that you use to do your job, the job related to the thing that you podcast about. What do you do? How do you use them? How do they work? Why did you decide to get them? As always, this exercise, it needs to have 3 parts: the intro, the meat, and the wrap-up. The intro should talk about why you chose the tools that you did. How did you make those decisions? How did you come upon these things? How did you find out about the tools that you use? The meat, talk about those tools, list them out. What are they? How much do they cost? How do they work? What is it that they do in the process? And then the wrap-up. Reinforce why you chose the tools that you use. Talk about tools that you might like to upgrade to. Things to think about for people who might be wanting to replicate what it is that you do. Remember, stories are important. Like I say, facts tell, stories sell. So add stories where you can. Personal stories are best. Keep your outline short and tight. Just list these things. Bullet point it. Work on your bullet points. For me, mic, interface, computer, software. That's it. You know the tools that you use. If you want to go for 5 or 6 minutes and practice working without those notes, go for it. Again, it's an exercise. You don't have to release this, but I do want you to go through it. I don't want you sitting around thinking about it, working it out in your head. You need to get behind the mic, actually speak the words into the microphone, listen to what you said, and then critique it, edit it. If you want to upload it, and if you want me to critique it, feel free to reach out to me. Bigpodcast.com is how to do that. Send me a link to your episode. Let me know what you want me to listen for, and we'll continue the conversation that way. That is it for today. But right now, before you list those items, before you hit record, start talking about them, I want you to go to bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Subscribe to this podcast. That way you won't miss what's coming up. We are almost done. Don't quit on me now. We are almost there, just a few days away from reaching the 30th day of the 30-day solo podcast challenge. I've made it easy on you at bigpodcast.com/subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode. There are 3 buttons. How are you listening to this podcast now? iPhone, got a button for you. Android, got a button for you. If you're on your computer, that free laptop that you got for being a kick-ass podcaster, I've got a button for you. It'll deliver all of these episodes to your computer, to your iPhone, to your Android, wherever you are, and it will deliver them for free. So go to bigpodcast.com/subscribe. While you are there, I've got my podcast toolkit available to you also for free. 25 episode templates, social media templates. If you're working with guests on your podcast, I've got a guest process that will make interviewing people so much easier for you. Scheduling people, getting the tech stuff together. You're going to want to follow this process. It's easy and it's free at bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Thank you so much for being part of the 30-Day Solo Podcast Challenge. I will see you tomorrow on the next episode.